Good morning and welcome to another episode of Morning Fog with Dr. Mark and Liz. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning, Mark. How you doing today?
I am absolutely wonderful. I am back outside. It is a little windy, so you may hear things rustling around, but it's a great day. How about you?
It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. And I'm really looking forward to today's topic. This is something that you and it comes to us every day, all the time, with every person, whether professionally, personally, um, it doesn't matter. It goes across the board, and it's understanding the nature of conflict because we aren't born with a what's I'm trying to think, a manual on how to navigate communication in life, and inevitably conflict comes up.
Well,
And some of us,
it's a natural part of human interaction.
it is, and the issue, I mean, and it's not that it's unhealthy. It needs to happen because we should be able to disagree and challenge each other. The problem is when we don't understand how to do it um, the right way as compared to the digging in the heels.
Well, it comes to a matter of whether or not there is a proactive approach to conflict, or as you say, digging in heels, or a catabolic destructive approach. And we're hoping today to be able to let folks know that there not only is a proactive, non-catabolic approach, but some of the secrets to doing that. And by the way, we should let folks know this is going to be our first multi-part podcast because it is such a big topic, and it's because it's so ubiquitous in our human experience.
Absolutely. So let's dig into it. Let's talk about the nature of conflict. As you said, it's a natural part of the human experience. Uh, it comes up in a variety of settings. As I said earlier, it can come up personally, it can come up professionally, it can come up socially. It really just depends on where you are when it happens, but there's so many places that it can occur.
It can, and we're seeing it more and more. We have, in a sense, a balkanization of our views and of society. And there is, as part of balkanization, a significant conflict as part of it. There's a disdain for others, and we see that certainly in our politics and our social views. And therefore, we're seeing more and more conflict and more um, uh, harboring of resentment and the rise of vitriol in that conflict, rather than, again, a proactive approach to understanding.
Yeah, and conflict can arise in all different types of ways. It can arise at work. It could be a team argument. It could be or an issue. It could be over finances. I don't know anybody who doesn't have some kind of conflict over finances in their personal life, at least. Um, values can come up at work. You may have certain values, and another person might not have those values. Uh, or honestly, as you just said, with our world today, politics. Talk about the conflicts of politics. There's no longer a middle. It's just far one way or far the other way, and it's really caused people to just not even want to come together anymore. Just
Oh,
hold their ground.
and we're talking about some of the significant conflicts because that's what we think about, those major disputes. Um, on the other side, there are the minor disagreements. Where do we want to eat lunch today? Or, where do you want to go on vacation? Or, well, what movie should we watch this evening? And on the other side of these significant disputes around finances, values, politics, we have those that just escalate way out of control. And we're not even talking about national level conflicts that might lead to war, but on personal levels. I mean, historically, we think of the Hatfields and the McCoys. Talk about conflict that got out of control between two families. So conflict, again, can be small, it can be big, it can be massive. But the fact is that regardless of the size, it is ever present in our world.
You made me think of the Capulets and the Montagues. If anybody's watched or heard or read Romeo and Juliet, it's a similar thing. So, but what's a positive thing about conflict? Conflict is an opportunity for growth. So conflicts can have negative consequences and can really damage relationships, but they can also bring people together, if you can learn how to have work through your conflict in a proactive way, like you said earlier.
Exactly. So let's just think about, so you started to mention some of the things about how conflicts can arise rather. Those are differences in opinions and in belief systems, in values, in expectations. Expectations is one of the most significant ones, and we usually don't manage our expectation well. And because we don't manage them well, we have expectations that are really unrealistic, and we never tell people who are on the other side of those expectations what we are looking for. And that always creates an opportunity for conflict on an interpersonal level. We also don't communicate well, and we're going to talk about communication a little bit later. But the famous playwright George Bernard Shaw said that the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taking place. And when we are miscommunicating, we have conflict because we don't have a complete understanding. We haven't shared information. And because of that lack of sharing information, we have an opinion or a belief that or an expectation that is not
Or an assumption, that's a big one.
exactly. Assumptions are huge, and we all know what they say about assumptions.
Yes,
Uh,
we did.
so uh, and we have more and more opportunities to have these things occur now because we can pop off, instead of a letter that takes some time to write out, we can quickly pop off an email, and before it's even thought about, it's in the other person's hands. We can send a text, and a text, we lose um, in excess of the majority of the conversation, the information that we want to send. 93% of communication is our body language and our intonation. And therefore, when we send a text, we're simply sending a message with only 7% of the information that we would normally want to share.
How many times have we seen this come across in our coaching where somebody sent somebody something and it was completely interpreted differently than what the person meant? And that's something to be really, really careful. We've said this before in other podcasts, so I'm going to repeat it again, though, because this is how important it is. Texting should only be for logistics. It should not be for emotions, because people can't understand emotions through text. And then what happens? Somebody might feel that they're being treated unfairly, or an assumption is made, or this miscommunication. All of a sudden, a simple text turns into conflict when it didn't need to be there because it didn't have the body language or the tonality.
That's
So
right.
that is really, really important. Um, Another thing that causes a lot of conflict is uncertainty. People do not change or uncertainty. People don't like change. People don't like uncertainty. And that's just a natural thing. We all like to feel safe. And when we feel like we don't know what's coming next, that can cause a lot of conflict, and it impacts people in different ways. So, for instance, if we want to talk about the pandemic, there were some people who, you know, just hunkered down and said, okay, no big deal. This is what we got to do. And other people who lived in a lot of fear. And when you are trying to balance those two polar opposites, that can cause a lot of conflict.
Oh, completely. The other side, and again, we're seeing this in a lot of discussions or conflict that comes around a lot of the social changes,
Mhm.
and people attach perceived injustices or unfair treatment. And there's no question that there are injustices, there are unfair treatments, but we also have a perception of how those are, and we have a certain focus on those, and that focus uh, tends to either magnify or tends to minimize those from the reality of the situation. And those individual perceived injustices or unfair treatments or background uh, sort of social awarenesses, or our nurturing through life, what our parents and our grandparents, our siblings, they experienced as far as cultural or personal differences.
Mhm.
So whenever we have a viewpoint that doesn't wind up in alignment with someone else, we have conflict. And again, we're seeing more and more of that, which is why this topic is so important.
So our goal in this three-part series is to get you to understand how to have those critical conversations when there is conflict, but also to be able to come from points of view to a viewing point. So the first thing we have to do is we have to identify the root cause of the conflict. How did it come about? What's the clash? Is it core values? Is it beliefs? Is it opinions? Is it expectations? As you said, what is the core root of your conflict? Frustration, resentment. There's a ton of things, but you have to dig deep and understand why do you have conflict with somebody?
Well, and again, the outcome of whatever this conflict is certainly anywhere on the scale from, as you just mentioned, misunderstanding to frustration, resentment. Increased tension can lead to significant anger. It can lead to passive aggressive circumvention of direct conflict and spreading gossip and negative statements. It can create loss of trust and loss of respect. It can escalate to not only verbal aggression and shouting matches, name calling, but can escalate to physical violence as well, and can potentially lead to other serious consequences, including legal action, or again with physical violence to potential charges of a felony, legal well, to trip down dealing with a charge of felonious assault.
Right.
Um,
And it can also, so taking it a little bit, bringing it back to sort of a more personal thing, what does conflict really do if they're not resolved? It creates a loss of trust. And we see this all the time with people. And when there's that loss of trust, it is super difficult to rebuild trust. It's not impossible. It's very possible to do, but it's a slow, glacial moving process because depending on how big the conflict was, um, when you don't trust somebody or you feel that you're not trusted or that you're not respected, it's very difficult to move forward. And that could be in your personal life or it could be at work. And if it's at work, what's going to happen? You're going to have a reduction in productivity or performance because you're feeling uncomfortable with your team or whoever your leaders are, that there's that breach. So it definitely impacts how you show up, not just in your personal life, but in your professional life for sure.
exactly. And as we're looking at all of these potential problems, if conflict escalates because it's not resolved, it is important to remember that it can be resolved. There are ways that, as you said, you can move from two different and opposing points of view to a viewing point, and we can understand that we're not always right. We don't all have the same experience. We don't all have the answers that will solve everything, although we'd like to typically think so. But in finding that resolution, it means that conflict can become not negative, not unhealthy, but can
Mm.
become opportunities to grow, to learn. Um, One of our uh, lines we always talk about is obstacles into opportunities. Well, conflict is an obstacle, but you can take that obstacle and you can make it into an opportunity, and you can find constructive ways to deal with the conflict that really not only don't damage, but more to the point, they deepen, they nurture, they strengthen relationships.
I love what you're saying because again, going back to what often happens, why does conflict happen? Because there are assumptions or that were made. And a lot of times when we're working with people and we get to the root cause, we realize that a lot of the root cause was assumptions were made. And then people start to dig in their heels on being on their side. So what we wanted to bring to you today was just the hope that yes, conflict is a part of life. It doesn't have to be unhealthy. There are healthy ways to work through conflict. Uh, Most importantly, by understanding that it's part of nature to have it, and then understanding that there's always a root cause and there's a way to get to it if you're willing and open to have that opportunity to come together.
I think that's a great place to pause, and we'll be back, and hopefully you will want to hear part two of conflict resolution, because again, there is a better way, and there is a wonderful way that you can actually deepen and nurture relationships, save friendships, save marriages, have better teamwork at your office, simply by understanding a few of the steps that people can take to have a better, more positive outcome. So we hope that you listen to part two. And until next time, have a truly extraordinary day.
Bye, Mark.
Bye now.